What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of The Last Cast. Welcome everyone to The Last Cast, the best Last of Us podcast here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. There has been rampant speculation of the future of the Last of Us franchise after the ending of The Last of Us Part 2. And what I want to talk about, guys, in this first segment of the show is all about the ending of The Last of Us Part 2, which we've talked about already in previous episodes of the show. But one theory, guys, or a number of theories that have come out, one of those being that the ending is actually not so grim after all. And so I want to talk about it. Let's break it down. And I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section down below so we can have a real conversation about it. So let's get into it. So guys, this is an article written by Danny Paez of Inverse. The Last of Us Part 2 ending detail hints Ellie's fate wasn't so grim after all. Now, The Last of Us Part 2 is a gut-wrenching story of revenge set in a lawless post-apocalyptic world. The ending to Naughty Dog's harrowing game builds upon the overall bleak tone in a very dark way, but one fan noticed a detail from the game's ending that could mean the grand finale isn't so grim after all. So everyone who's played The Last of Us 2 would agree that it ends on a seemingly irredeemable, dreary note. Now, first of all, guys, my thoughts on the ending. I already gave you guys my thoughts. You guys can check that out on the YouTube channel here for, the ending explained and just kind of giving you guys my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2 and the ending as a whole. However, what else, just really quickly, The Last of Us Part 2, guys, as far as the ending is concerned, I don't necessarily think it was a dreary note, so to speak. I actually thought that the ending was quite fitting for this story that was, one of revenge, one of pain, and one of forgiveness. I really thought, guys, that the ending was really showing us that Ellie playing the guitar in that empty house was the one last thing that kind of connected her and gave her those memories of Joel. But when she left the guitar out of the guitar case and next to the windowsill, it's essentially stating that the story is still open, in my personal opinion. She's leaving to go complete a task, whatever that might be, maybe to go get Abby and take her down, or if it's to find out the origins of the infection, or whatever it is, guys, the story's still open. And so to me, I thought that there's plenty of ways that, the story can be, go into a positive light down the road. Maybe it's not going to be right here, right now, but I thought that at some point or another, there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, even though there still may be a lot of darkness leading up to that. So, all in all, guys, Ellie gave up the semblance of a quaint family life she had built with Dina and their newborn, JJ, for one last chance to kill Abby for killing Joel at the start of the game. Ultimately, Ellie's lust for revenge leads her to lose that family in a few fingers, which means she can no longer play the guitar, one of the few connections she still had to Joel. Now, what if we were to tell you that the final scenes of The Last of Us 2, when Ellie realizes she's unable to play the guitar Joel gifted her, was actually a happy ending? This fan theory began gaining traction, and it claims that Naughty Dog left out a large chunk of the time between when Ellie left Santa Barbara and when she returned to the farmhouse that she and Dina had been living. That could mean Ellie still had a life elsewhere, and that she wasn't returning to an empty nest after she let Abby go. Granted, it takes a long time to travel between Santa Barbara, California, and Jackson, Wyoming, but it does seem like a lot of time has passed. The one key detail that has made fans believe this is the rumor is, obviously the bracelet Dina gave Ellie. When Ellie has her final face-off against Abby in Santa Barbara, it's missing, but then Ellie is wearing it again when she returns to the farmhouse. The screenshots were obviously from a Twitter user. Mara posted a screenshot of another fan laying out the entire theory with screenshots of Ellie's wrists in the different scenes. So the theory explains that Dina most likely returned to Jackson after Ellie left to hunt down Abby. So Ellie could have returned to Jackson after traveling to Santa Barbara, where she was reunited with Dina and JJ. Then she could have gone to the farmhouse to collect her old things, but decided to leave that part of her past behind her. So it's a very interesting theory, guys, especially when you're considering that this is something that's actually quite more, you would think it's pretty happy, even though for me at least, I felt that the story is still absolutely left open because of the guitar. Now, maybe she went back to get the guitar. It's hard to say. I mean, look, guys, it's a theory for a reason. We don't know for sure. Sure, maybe Naughty Dog is giving us hints here. I mean, there is a reason. There has to be a reason why she is not wearing that bracelet in that final, the final sequence against Abby. And then, of course, at the very end of the game, when she goes back to the farmhouse, she is wearing the bracelet. It's a very interesting concept that people are obviously, finding out about and kind of breaking down. Now, a YouTuber commented on the letter you find at the farm when you are with Dean and the baby. It's from the baby's father's mom, Jesse's mom, saying they will always have a place in Jackson if they choose to come back home. Also, if you notice, when Ellie leaves to fight Abby at the end, she's not wearing the bracelet Dean gave her, but when she returns, the camera zooms in on her hand. We were focused on the finger missing out, look completely past the fact that now she is wearing the bracelet, possibly meaning she has already been to Jackson and is living with Dina. She just went back to the farm for the guitar but decided to leave it. That represents her finally being able to accept Joel's death and end the cycle of revenge. My thing is all of us are going to take different things from it, guys. I just felt that she left the guitar next to the windowsill. She didn't put it back into the guitar case. So that tells me the story's still open. She's going to go do what she's got to do and come back, and she's going to play and maybe, play at some point or another down along the journey, because it's the one thing showing she hasn't let go of Joel yet. She hasn't, obviously forgotten about him. And, so I think personally that, and it's just my opinion, the story's left open because she doesn't put that story, that part of her story, away and back into the guitar case. She left it next to the windowsill, just saying that she's basically going to come back and play it at some point or another, but she's got other things to do, whatever that is, whether it's to figure out the origin of the infection, reunite with Dina, or maybe she already has been reunited with Dina. We're not sure. Or is she going to go back after Abby again? I mean, it's hard to say. I don't think she's going to go back after Abby, but I do think that at some point or another, all these different characters are going to have to work together in order to solve, what started the origins of the infection. Is it like Resident Evil, where the Umbrella Corporation is behind, spreading this infection? Is it something like that here in The Last of Us? Or is it something that Mother Earth just released this, infection upon the world? What is it? And so there's a ton of question marks, guys. Did Ellie's quest for revenge destroy her entire life, leaving her an empty shell of her former self, unable even to hold a guitar? Gamers would probably interpret the ending as Ellie's trying to heal and move past her violent past instead of her returning to a shell of her former life. The biggest piece of evidence required to prove this is the note Mara's screenshot was referring to, which players encounter on the dining room table early in the farmhouse sequence. Even if you don't read the note, it makes sense that Dina would return to Jackson with baby JJ rather than try to live along at the isolated farmhouse, especially when she had family back in Jackson. So look, Naughty Dog is obviously, they're keeping this story open. They want us to break it down as much as we possibly can. They're giving us hints along the way. It's hard to say, guys. To me, when I first, even after this theory came out, and we see, Ellie coming back to the farmhouse and she has that bracelet on, what it tells me is that, it was almost like she was removing Dina and JJ and all of that, kind of putting those things out of her mind because all she had to focus on was Joel. So she put that bracelet maybe, into her backpack or something to take out Abby. And that was like the whole mission. And then afterwards, maybe she, to put the bracelet back on when she came to return, and then there, the baby and Dina were not there. And so it was like a big surprise to her. It's hard to say, guys. It's really hard to say whether she's already been reunited or she was hoping to be reunited and they weren't there. They were gone. Guys, Naughty Dog has done an incredible job just getting us to all talk about this because I feel like the story is left open. It's definitely not a closed story yet. I believe there's going to be a number of other titles and entries into this series, which I'm hoping there are. But I think we're at least going to get one more because we got to figure out what the origins are. We got to figure out, is Ellie the only one who's immune here? Is there others that are immune to this infection? And what does that mean moving forward? And so it'll be very interesting to say the least, guys. What do you guys think about this theory that came out? Let me know, guys, in the comment section down below, and let's have a real conversation about it. With The Last of Us Part 3 all but confirmed at this point in time by Naughty Dog, obviously, guys, we're in the very early stages of The Last of Us Part 2 and the shelf life that will be The Last of Us Part 2. We don't even have multiplayer yet. Who knows what that's going to all encompass? We'll talk about, you know, The Last of Us online and the multiplayer aspects of it later on in the show. But I want to talk about some theories that have come out, some of them that make no sense, others that, you know, do somewhat make sense regarding The Last of Us Part 2 and what that could mean for The Last of Us Part 3 moving into the future. So let's talk about it. So, guys, in an article written by Jason Wojnar of Screen Rant, to try to make sense of Ellie and Abby's story in The Last of Us Part 2, game fans have come up with several theories, some more credible than others. Naughty Dog has once again knocked it out of the park with The Last of Us Part 2, which hit store shelves in the PSN store. Many plot elements from the PS4 game proved controversial, either from fans' personal opinions on how the story should have gone, or things they find nonsensical. So, at number 10, guys, what makes no sense is the two protagonists kill everyone but their main targets. First, Abby heads to the theater to kill Ellie after she finds her friends dead. She ultimately lets her and Dina live, but not before killing Jesse and brutally maiming Tommy. Years later, Ellie hunts Abby down to exact vengeance in Santa Barbara, only to let her live at the last moment. While the message about vengeance resounds clearly, it is less impactful when remembering the dozens of people they both killed beforehand. And look, for me, guys, I've stated this a number of times about this story. When it comes to this that doesn't make any sense, to me, The Last of Us Part 2 is about three things in particular. One is pain, two is revenge, and three is forgiveness. And throughout the course of the story, we see all three things. We see there's a lot of pain from either side. So let's just talk, for example, Abby and Ellie. They both lost something, someone close to them, or many things that were close to them. Obviously, the revenge was on both sides. One decided to not necessarily forgive Ellie, which being Abby, didn't necessarily forgive her, but at the same time, she let her live. The same can be said from, you know, Ellie, when she had all the power in the world to kill Abby, she decided not to. And so the idea here is, guys, is that they forgave each other. It's almost like they both realized, look, we've lost someone, something, or many things along the journey. Now it's time for us to go our separate ways. And I wouldn't be surprised if they team up in like The Last of Us Part 3 to figure out what the origins, the infection, and things of that nature are. But I get it. I know why people would be upset about that whole ordeal. But I feel that Abby, when she had all the power to kill Ellie, she realized that Ellie's got to be someone special here. This is a special human being. There's a reason why, you know, the things have transpired. And so that's why I felt like she spared her. Not because she liked Ellie or she necessarily forgave her, but I feel like she felt that she was a special, you know, in one way or another. Whether, you know, she kind of had this thought in the back of her mind that she was immune to the infection, whatever it might be. And then Ellie, the same kind of thing. She felt that Abby was underneath the surface a good person, and so they forgave each other. And so that's what I took from that. Number 9. What makes sense is Ellie's mother. Many were convinced that Ellie's mother, Anna, would play a significant part of the plot. This is based mostly on a poster from the ending of Uncharted 4 showcasing a fictional story called The Last of Us American Daughters. The poster was a pregnant woman resembling Ellie wearing a gas mask. Some also theorized that Abby was Ellie's mother after the first trailer showcasing her was released. And then, of course, Owen and Mel's deaths are something that make no sense. Few people think with a clear head when under the threat of extreme violence, but either Owen or Mel had enough time in the aquarium to tell Ellie of Mel's pregnancy. Had Ellie known, the encounter would have turned out differently. Instead, Ellie ends up ending Mel, which leads to Abby's rampage in the theater. And then, of course, at number 7, if the Fireflies wouldn't have made a cure. The first game's ending is a polarizing moment. Some understand and defend Joel's action, while others feel like he doomed the world's last chance at salvation. However, some wonder if Fireflies we're further away from a vaccine than they let on. By their reasoning, just because Ellie has an immunity does not mean they could have used the samples to craft a vaccine, which is very, very true. I think that with that kind of power that the Fireflies would have, you don't know what they would have done with it at the end of the day. And I think, guys, that obviously they would have had to kill Ellie in order to get the samples needed for the vaccine. But I think, guys, that in my opinion, there's definitely room here that there are other people out there that are immune outside of just Ellie. Is she the only one that's immune to, the whole world? I feel like there's got to be others that are immune to this thing. And how are you immune is something, else as well. There could be, a million different ways in which this story could go moving forward. We've talked about at the end of The Last of Us Part 2, when she's leaving, she leaves that, the guitar out of the guitar case, which means to me that the story's left open, that she still has more to do before playing the guitar once again, even though she couldn't really play it without having, a couple of those fingers. But at the end of the day, I feel like she's going to figure out what started it all, what started the infection, and, how can she help it, or do something to better the world after all the darkness that kind of overtook herself as well as other people within The Last of Us Part 2. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. Now, why the group spare Tommy and Ellie? Many think that after killing Joel, the group went too easy on Tommy and Ellie. Of course, there would not be much of a game if Abby and her friends ended Ellie's life so early in the adventure. While the group considers their killing of Joel justified, Ellie was swearing vengeance right in front of them, so they probably should have gotten rid of her at that moment as well. Which I agree on this. Obviously, it wouldn't make much for her story, but guys, if you remember, there was, when the leaks first came out about The Last of Us Part 2, that Joel dies in it in a very brutal way. One of the leaks that came out was stating that Abby kills not only Joel, but also kills Ellie, and then you're forced to play as Abby the rest of the game after you kill Ellie. And so that's why there was so much backlash on this title, was not only that Joel died, but people were, the leaks were basically stating that Abby kills Ellie, and you're forced to play as Abby and to like her, or whatever the case might be, throughout the course of the rest of the journey, which obviously is not true. You play Ellie half the game, you play Abby half the game, and then you kind of go back and forth in the end. But, you could kind of break it down, like, why did they spare him? But, obviously it would have made for not as good of a story. Now, Ellie can still save the world. While this runs contrary to a previous fan theory, many feel Ellie still has a chance to give up her life for a vaccine given the state of the world at the end of The Last of Us Part 2. The Fireflies have regrouped and made a base in Santa Barbara. If word gets back to Ellie and their medical facilities are like they were in Salt Lake City, she very well could go under the knife again and donate her life in the name of saving humanity. Which absolutely, that is something that maybe she now has the power to say, look, I'm willing to give my life so that, you guys can create a vaccine. My thought, though, is what would be very interesting, guys, if this was something, like, I just want to see what the origins here are of this infection and such, that, we play as Ellie, she figures out what it is, and maybe it's gloom and doom, like there's no way around getting the vaccine other than herself, but maybe there's others that are immune as well. It could make for something very interesting moving into The Last of Us Part 3. Why doesn't Nora lie to Ellie? One of the most brutal scenes in the first half of the game sees Ellie torture Nora for information on Abby's location. Nora previously breathed in spores, so her life is already doomed. Knowing this, why didn't she just lie to Ellie and give a false location? Maybe she wasn't thinking straight after all the pain and fear of death, but it would have saved her friends a lot of tragedy if she had lied. Just true, once again, just something that wouldn't have made the story as interesting. They could have probably figured it out, but who knows? Ellie is connected to the cult. This theory was circulating before the game's release based on Ellie's scar. Many noted the Seraphites as scars in the trailers and thought Ellie's eyebrow scar was connected to the group. Years ago, Neil Druckmann said the scar had more relevance, which was yet to be revealed, and fans thought it would be explored in the sequel. Ultimately, however, the game does not touch on this at all. So this is something, guys, that would be very interesting, to say the least. Is Ellie actually the villain in this entire story? Even though you could say that she's a villain because, I mean, it's like it's a free-for-all. It's like the Wild West days back, in the Last of Us franchise at this point in time. Because it's very much so, everything's very run down and everything's being run by groups and cliques and things of that nature. And so Ellie being a part of the cult, I mean, that would be something very interesting. It's hard to say. I mean, she does brutally, kill her enemies and such in significant ways. And it's like, where did she learn all of this? There's a lot of questions there, which obviously she could be a part of the cult. What if we're playing the villain the entire time throughout the course of this series? At number 2, why is Ellie the only one with immunity? We already kind of touched on this. Ellie is so special because of her immunity, a plot point which plays only a minor role in the sequel. Why is she the only one? People are still being born, and it is difficult to believe she is the only person who resists the infection. There has to be at least one other person who similarly got bit and discovered their own immunity. I agree with this 100%. Imagine if Abby is immune, or imagine if JJ, after Dina gave birth, imagine if JJ is immune. It's interesting, guys, but I do think there's got to be other people who are immune in this world. And then Ellie already returned to Jackson. Some fans note Ellie's lack of weapons and fully healed wounds in the last scene as a sign more time has passed than most would think. They also say she looks healthier than in the prior Santa Barbara chapter. Perhaps these improvements mean she has already returned to Jackson and Dina has forgiven her. If this was the case, however, then why is only Ellie's stuff left at the farmhouse? Well, if this theory is true, Ellie might not have been back to Jackson yet, and that's why she started playing the guitar and such. It was kind of like she was going back to Jackson to pick up the rest of her stuff. That is something that could be true. My only thinking with that is guys, we could go on ad nauseum about these last sequences, and that's what makes a video game such an awesome thing, and The Last of Us in particular, because this is one that we're going to be talking about until The Last of Us Part 3 comes out, and I am very excited about that, because these theories are very interesting, and it leads us to like where could this go in The Last of Us Part 3? Where is the story going? Is she going to, who knows? I mean, are they going to move on to another character in The Last of Us Part 3? Are we going to play as Ellie again? Are we going to play as somebody else? Are we going to be switching between Ellie and Abby once again? Is it going to be, are they going to be trying to take down a corporation that started the infection, similar to like Resident Evil? Or are they going to, just try to figure out the origins of the infection? Are they going to is she going to go after Abby once again? Or who knows where it's going, guys? But I believe there's a lot more story left to be told. And that was a big, one of the symbols that kind of gave me that impression was when she left the guitar next to the windowsill instead of putting it into the guitar case, closing that chapter of her story. It's like she's leaving that chapter still open, the one thing that's connecting her to Joel. So we'll see where it goes in The Last of Us Part 3. I'm excited. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Which theories do you think make sense? What doesn't make sense to you guys? Let me know what you guys think, and let's have a real conversation about it. One of my biggest complaints about The Last of Us Part 2 was it was a game that came to us unfinished. Not from the standpoint of the story, but after you beat the story, obviously you want to have more ways to connect with the franchise or just connect with the game as a whole. And obviously with The Last of Us Part 1, we had factions, which was multiplayer, and now we are waiting for factions to return here in The Last of Us Part 2. What I wanted to talk about, though, guys, is what could a really ambitious project by Naughty Dog be for The Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer? So let's talk about it. The Last of Us Online. This is a take, guys, similar to, and we've talked about it in the past on the YouTube channel. You guys can check out those videos, but we talked about how The Last of Us Online could be similar to Red Dead Online or GTA Online. Rockstar has done an incredible job with those two titles, creating these living, breathing multiplayer experiences where The Last of Us could absolutely do something similar to this, where the dark, gritty type of Last of Us Online that you can play with your friends, you can play by yourself, do PvP, whatever it might be, guys, having multiple different ways you can connect with the story. I look at this and it could be so big for Naughty Dog, because The Last of Us Online could also really help them to kind of promote and market their future projects, whether that's The Last of Us Part 3, whether that is, future DLC, whatever it might be. It could be a really great way for them to have people come back over and over again to this franchise to continue playing and, not moving onwards to other games, kind of sticking with the Last of Us franchise. And I'm one of those people that definitely wants this to happen because I think it could really help grow the fan base over time. Obviously, with The Last of Us Part 2 and the success that was The Last of Us Part 2, we saw, without a doubt, guys, so much, popularity of this game. Now, a lot of people didn't like the title in one way, shape, or form. However, it did have the most pre-orders of all time for the PlayStation. And then on top of that, I mean, there's just a lot of different ways, guys, that when you look at the sales, when you look at obviously from a sales perspective to pre-orders and all of those things, this is a huge title for PlayStation. I think that if Naughty Dog took it seriously to create a multiplayer experience that can move on from one game to the next, that being The Last of Us Online, I think it could be something really special. Here's the thing is, with The Last of Us Part 1, factions got kind of discontinued. They just stopped doing it in Last of Us Part 1. And now with The Last of Us Part 2, I don't want to see them do that again, where they stop, servicing it because they're moving on to Last of Us Part 3. I would like them to start like The Last of Us Online, where they're consistently updating it over time, even for future entries. I think it just makes sense all the way around. I mean, and that's what's popular now as well. I mean, look at Call of Duty Warzone, and they're going to be updating and servicing that throughout each, entry in the Call of Duty franchise moving forward. You got Red Dead Online, GTA Online. They're going to be promoting their products throughout those two online experiences as well. It makes sense to me, guys, that The Last of Us should do something similar here. Maybe they'll have their own flavor, their own twist on it, which I think is a very good idea. But it's primed for a really good multiplayer experience that brings people back consistently after beating the multiplayer experience or the single player experience. So that's the thing, guys. I want to see the success of The Last of Us moving forward, the continued success of it, and I want to see a growing, thriving fan base at the same time that comes back to continue playing the game in one way, shape, or form. But let me know, guys. What do you guys think? Do you think The Last of Us Online, they could take kind of a chapter or a page out of the GTA or Red Dead Redemption Online book? Or do you think that they should just kind of make factions similar to like it was in the first game? Maybe just kind of change it up a little bit, add a few more modes. What do you guys think? Let's have a real conversation about it. And like I said, let me know in the comment section below. Many of us in the community have talked about where we would like to see The Last of Us Part 3 go. From the ending of The Last of Us Part 2 to The Last of Us Part 3, where do we want the story to go? And there's a ton of different directions that Naughty Dog could choose to go here in the third entry in this franchise. So I want to talk to you guys about some of the thoughts that I'm having in my mind, and I've talked about this a number of times on the YouTube channel, but I thought like we could really dive in this, in this segment of the show about really where we would like the story to go and what could be interesting. I think there's a number of ways and a number of different places that Naughty Dog could go with this third entry in the franchise. So for me, guys, I believe that when we talk about The Last of Us Part 3, we got to talk about the second game and kind of what transpired. That being, of course, at the end of the game, Ellie goes to the farmhouse and goes upstairs. She plays the guitar, really can't play it though because of her two missing fingers, and then she leaves the guitar next to the windowsill and she, leaves the house. Now, one of the theories is, guys, is that she actually is already reunited with Dina in JJ over in Jackson. And, now she's heading back to the farmhouse just to get the rest of her stuff. But part of me wonders if that's actually what's happening here. All in all, though, guys, when we break down what we thought of that last sequence, regardless of whether she's, been reunited with JJ and Dina, my thought is this. She leaves that guitar propped up at the windowsill. She doesn't put it back in the guitar case. That tells me that chapter of her life is not done yet. She's not putting it away yet. She's leaving it out so that she has other things that she's got to get done. And where that goes is going to be very interesting in this third game. My thought is this, guys. I feel that the third game is a perfect time, especially if it's going to be the last game in the franchise. But even if it's not, I think a great way for them to go is the origins of the infection, moving into The Last of Us Part 3. Figuring out what was it? What started the infection in the first place? Was it, man-made, like from, if you think of Resident Evil and, obviously the Umbrella Corporation and how they're, releasing these, this virus into the world? Or so is it like a corporation similar to that in The Last of Us? Or is it like Mother Earth? Something happened where, this virus just ended up spreading, very rapidly, whatever it might be, like, we're not treating Mother Earth well enough or something. Who knows what it could be, right, guys? But I think that at the end of the day, it'd be very interesting to see the origins of the infection, where this whole thing, I think Ellie figuring out, the origins. Is she the only one out there in the entire world that is immune to the infection? Are there others? Is she going to, kind of, give her own life so that they can create a vaccine and things of that nature? There's so many different narratives that they could go down here. I feel like, Ellie very well may, who knows? I mean, at the end of the game, she may decide that, look, I'm leaving this open, this guitar case open, because you know what? I can't get over the fact that, I let Abby go and I'm going to go back after her again, which I don't think is going to happen. But, that's always a possibility that she's going to go try to end it once and for all. But I do think that she's going to try to figure out what the origins here, where this whole thing started and how we can stop it. And so that'll be a very interesting, concept, in my opinion, moving into The Last of Us Part 3. Could we play as Ellie as well as Abby once again? I think that's very possible as well. One thing I'd like to see is more environments throughout the course of The Last of Us Part 3. It'd be really nice to kind of get that feel from like The Last of Us Part 1, where you're going all the way across the country. It'd be kind of nice to do that once again. We've done it both ways. We did it in one location pretty much, that being Seattle here in The Last of Us Part 2. And then we kind of, in The Last of Us Part 1, went all the way across the country essentially. And so I kind of like both concepts, and I'd like to see some new places, like she has to go to other places throughout the course of The Last of Us Part 3. I think that could be really interesting moving into the third title. There's just a number of ways, guys, and a number of different places that they could take this story, that being Naughty Dog. I'm sure they already have a vision. They already have a thought in their mind of where they're going with the story. But that's really what I'd like to see. I want to see what the origins are here. I would like to at least start kind of going on that journey, figuring out where the origins are, and things happen along the way, just like any story in The Last of Us. Different things happen that might take you off, your path or whatever. Even if it's like it takes 2 games to get to the ending or something, even if it, say, in The Last of Us Part 3 is when we start our journey to figure out what started the infection, and we don't come to a conclusion until the 4th game or something, because there's so much that's happening within The Last of Us Part 3. Whatever it is, because there's going to be a lot of obstacles that are set in Ellie's path or in Abby's path or whoever's path we're talking about. There are going to be issues throughout the course of the journey. And so I just think, guys, that the origins of the infection is really where they should go in The Last of Us Part 3. I mean, they could do so many other things, but that's where I want them and I want to see the story go, in my personal opinion. But with that being said, guys, I'd love to hear from all of you. Where do you want them to take The Last of Us Part 3? Do you want to see the origins of the infection? Do you want to see something else entirely? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let's have a real conversation about it. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of The Last Cast. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.